We should be live. Here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are, and we have 2 attendees, 3 attendees, 4 attendees. We're gonna let you all in just a second because I don't remember why we did this webinar style because it's been so long. Let you all in just a second. Okay. You'd think someday I'd get that figured out. Okay, so we'll get everybody on screen in just a moment here. We're having just a goofy day to say the least, right, Lori?
Yeah. We got some hammering going on outside.
Oh, well, nothing like people doing work and not telling their neighbors they're going to do it, huh? Yeah.
Exactly.
So I was going to ask how you're doing, but I think that kind of sums it up.
I was doing great until that, but you know, it is what it is. So yeah, things are good. Things are good. It's almost the end of June, and we've got our friends joining us. Going to be live today.
Yes, and hopefully people have some good things to discuss. You know, I can see that we've got one of our lender friends here, Rajat's here, so he can kind of tell us what's going on out there that won't be getting him in, you know, trouble for, you know, talking about rates and all of that stuff because we have to take care of our lender friends. So what's any news that we missed from last week that we should know about?
If there was any, I missed it too. Last week was a week. There's a lot of things going on last week that honestly, I just, a lot of things were off my radar. I do have an email I'm going to jump onto and just skim real quick to see if there's any updates. I don't think there's anything really new, but let me take a quick peek. Unless you need me to fill some time, then I'll do that.
No, I'm just telling anybody who's looking at us in the chat, they can come join us in the webinar. So, you know, we can have everybody interactive. We got a few folks here. We'll bring them up. Well, you know what? Let's just bring them all in. Yeah. What the heck? Let's bring them all in. Or promote. We're going to figure this out sooner or later. You know, you'd think I've been doing this long enough. I'd have it taken care of. Let's see. There's got to be an easier way to do this, but I guess not. So, are they still pounding out there?
Yes.
If you haven't been, you should all have been promoted to panelists. So I'm not sure where, if you put your camera on, we'll be able to see you. If you don't, then you're going to be hiding. Oh, come on, Olivia, come on up here. You're one of our favorites. You gotta come join us. Okay, so let's see. We've got just us on camera. Everybody else is here, but we're not on camera. Come on, guys. Don't be shy. If I can get up and do it.
Sorry.
Okay, well, so did they have a Friday meeting this week? Nod yes or no. Okay. Is there anything good that we should be concerned about, like the implementation of the defensible space? In fact, I got in a conversation with my son about that yesterday because he was like, well, isn't it only when all 3 things are checked? And I'm thinking, number 1, well, you know, I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know what you're talking about. 2, I don't think so. So if they're not too noisy, maybe you can shed a little light on what's going on.
I have a reprieve. And had I known there was going to be this work going on outside, I would have suggested a later time, but it just happened. So
it could only get worse, maybe.
Yeah. So the part that went into effect in January did require all 3 components at that time, which was if it's a residential 1 through 4 where a TDS is required, if it's in a high or very high fire zone, and if it was built before 2010. That was what went into effect in January. So he's not wrong in thinking that all 3 had to apply, because from January to June, that was the case.
Okay.
Effective July 1st, it's 2 components with a caveat. So 2 components is residential 1 through 4, where a TDS is required, and high or very high fire zone. So if those two conditions both apply, the form is required. Now, the caveat, not really a caveat, it's a, and then if the property is built before 2010, paragraph 3 applies.
Okay.
So it's no longer dependent on the age of the property for the form itself to apply. That doesn't matter. The age matters for paragraph 3, for the completion of paragraph 3, for the homeowner to identify whether any of those listed features exist, if they're aware of any of those features existing.
Fun times at Lori's place today. Yeah, I think it's going to take us all a little while to get used to, what needs it, what doesn't need it, what you need to do. We have a question coming in from Carla. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Well, if we don't have any more questions on the defensible space, I can't even talk today. If we don't have any questions on the defensible space form, we'll get on to Carla's. But let's see, it looks pretty quiet out there. Thank God Carla's asking questions, because this is open forum today and nobody wants to be on camera. So I don't know. And I'm looking like I'm hitching a little bit. So hopefully everything's going to work here. But Carla asks, it's still confusing about the mask, vaccinated and unvaccinated. And now I just lost the rest of the question. How do you manage with showings, open houses? What about our offices? Some are vaccinated and some are not. Ridiculous. It's a crazy little confusing world out there, I think. Lori, and what's the latest on the office? If you were running an office, what would you have to do?
Okay, so the office requirements require employees to comply with, if you are not vaccinated, you have to wear a mask.
I'm sorry. I hope you don't have any really important Zooms later today. You're very fortunate.
This one is the most important one of the whole week.
Okay, let's start all over again. So, for an office, because there was a change. They had rules, and then they had rules, and then they had new rules, if I remember correctly.
Well, it did change, but basically you can only control your employees. You can only require specific things of employees. The CDC guideline is that if you're not vaccinated, then you're supposed to wear a mask. And so, when we go out to businesses, we see signage that says, if you're not vaccinated, please wear a mask. And if you are vaccinated, masks are optional. So that's the same thing in the workplace. Now, an employer can require all of their employees to wear it. And when I've gone to the grocery store, I've seen all of the employees wearing it. And I have a hard time believing that every single employee that I come into contact with or see in a grocery store, is not vaccinated. So that leads me to believe that store's requirement for their employees is vaccination. So for your employees, you can require it. Now, you can impose it on your agents, but I would say good luck to that, because they're going to say, well, in the workplace, this is my workplace. So in my office, if I'm vaccinated, I don't have to wear it. So, you really have to just have your regular employees. You have to have it documented if they state that they're vaccinated, and that you can have them self-attest. They can tell you they've been vaccinated and get it in writing that they say the reason they're exempt from wearing the mask is that they are vaccinated, and you don't need to require proof. In fact, it's recommended that you don't ask for proof, because then you have to store that and you have to keep it separate from their regular employee file. I don't even remember the details on that, because we don't have any employees, so that doesn't matter to us. I think you have to put it in their medical file.
sorry. If we had known, we could have been at a quieter place. Okay.
Yeah, well, in the backyard, they're doing gardening, so.
It's just a hot mess over there at Lori's place today.
So in terms of showings, you know, a homeowner can, and showings in open house, a homeowner can require everyone that enters wear a mask. But personally, I don't think you want to be the police on that.
Yeah, I had kind of an interesting experience a week or so ago with a home inspection, and the inspection company, you know, said, okay, well, everybody's going to need to wear masks if you're not vaccinated. And I'm like, well, we're all vaccinated, we're all good. And he's like, okay. And I said, but this is a rental unit, so we should find out what the tenant wants. So the tenant says, we want everybody in mask and we want booties. And I'm like, okay. So we go there, tenant sitting in the living room, getting ready to leave. Listing agent representative sitting in the living room, no booties, no mask, but tell us to put them on when we walk in the door. And it was like, I don't understand. It was really kind of bizarre and awkward. And I think that is part of the problem, is that it's just, you know, I went to Trader Joe's and they have the sign up saying, okay, if you're vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask, but if you aren't, you should. And then I walk into the Trader Joe's and half of the employees are wearing masks, half of the employees aren't wearing masks, half of the shoppers are wearing masks. I'm kind of freaked out by the whole thing, so I put a mask on. And the when I get to the checkout line, you know, they're bagging my groceries. And I'm like, you know, I want to put all my refrigerated stuff together. So I'm getting my refrigerated stuff. They're like, no, you can't do that. I'm like, what do you mean I can't do that? I'm like, that's our only rule left. You can't bag your own groceries. And I'm like, I put them in the cart. You take them out of the cart, you scan it, you put it in a bag, and then I take it out of the bag. What's the difference if I put it in the bag versus you put it in the bag? Because you've already touched something I've already touched. So, you know, we're just in a weird world. And I think, you know, each office is going to have to look at, you know, I think a lot of it's going to have to do with office culture, in my ever so humble opinion. You know, I'm assuming that the raising of the eyes was from the construction noise. And I think everybody's just going to need to be just consistent. I think consistent is really what we need to do. If you know, like, if I'm going to sit there and tell somebody coming into one of my listings, you need to wear a mask when you walk in, and I'm standing there, I should have a mask on. You know, open houses, I still think, in my ever so humble opinion, you know, the next time I have one, I'm going to make, you know, just wear a mask when you walk in the house. Here's one, put it on. You don't, when you're done, throw it away, you know, just to keep everybody safe. Everything's still flying around out there, and we got this variant coming, and it's coming to Orange County, and we need to be aware that there's still people that are going to get sick, and I don't want it to be my clients. Anybody in our little group out here in Facebook land want to join in? You don't have to go on camera, but you can speak. Joyce, Inez, I think we've lost one. Okay, let's see. Oh, Joy's coming in as a panelist here, so maybe Joy might want to speak up. You know, any input. I'd love to hear what people are doing out there.
So I have a quiet second. So I received an email from an attorney who said at this point there's no specifics in the law that address open houses and it's his opinion that there's not that liability for brokers and for agents as we felt early on. Now, there's no case precedents to verify that, but because there's no specifics in the law that masks are required in open houses or not, it's his feeling that, okay, we can confidently just allow people to self-attest. If a seller wants it, great, have it in writing, have them put in the listing agreement or an addendum or something, an amendment or something that, they do require masks upon entry, but who's going to enforce it? That's the key, and so if you don't want to find yourself becoming the police, maybe even putting yourself in harm's way, just put it in the MLS, and then you know what? It's the honor system. People are either going to do it or they're not.
Well, yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, everything's the honor system. Man, everything's, all well and good until somebody gets hurt. So, stay tuned, kids. I mean, we're in uncharted territory, unless maybe you're 105 years old, maybe then. If you can remember what was happening back there during that previous pandemic. But, hey, look, we got somebody brave on camera with us. Hey, Raj, how you doing today? You want to give us a lender update? Not like we're putting you on the spot or anything.
Sure, I'd be happy to. No, it doesn't put me on the spot. Frankly, interest rates are pretty much the same as they were. The only major changes that have really happened in the last, I'd say 2 weeks is obviously about a month and a half ago, there was the bulletin from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac about how they wanted to reduce the amount of investment loans in their portfolio down to 7%. I know that last week, or maybe it was the week before, some of the lenders actually received letters asking to be reduced down to 3%, and that was more specific towards whatever their own portfolios were. But what that has really meant in terms of interest rates, at least for your potential investor clients who are purchasing second homes or investment properties, is the purchase rates for those transactions are actually not bad at all. So if you had a client, let's say, putting 25% down great credit, they would get a rate somewhere down like 3.3, 3.25 even. But if they already own properties, if they're looking to refinance those properties, they'll get terrible rates. I mean, we're going to be talking somewhere up in like 4.5%, 5%, maybe even higher than that. So that's actually the only big change, or not change, the only big piece of movement in rates. Outside of that, they've been holding steady for a couple months now. I'm not expecting any large drastic swings anytime in the next short term. That being said, my motto has always been straightforward. There's never a bad time to buy. Like, if you can afford the monthly payment, you buy it right now. If it's underwater next year, don't sell it next year. Hold on to it until it's in a better position. There's never a bad time to purchase, only a bad time to sell it. So.
Well, and you just brought up a really good point because, I think the consensus is this is not a bubble. We're not going to be having a crash. The fundamentals are good. Everything's nice and stable out there,
Sure.
But we just have this inventory issue. Yep. And I think people always forget. So if you did buy high, well, number one, you've got just a, ridiculously low rate anyhow. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, if you would have held on to a house that you bought pre-Great Recession, something that you bought maybe 2002, that thing shot up and then it crashed and then it kind of shot up again and kind of came down and now it's shot back up. The thing to take away is people need to understand this is not, you're not buying the stock market, you're buying shelter.
Right.
But buy and hold.
Yeah, I mean, so I have like, so I grew up in a real estate household. My parents are both realtors. They've been realtors for 20 years out in Hawaii. That's actually how I got into the industry. So I have all sorts of anecdotal jokes about stuff like this, but the jokes that we tell, at least in my family, is like, oh, my dad as a realtor, his whole retirement portfolio is investment properties because he's brown, so he wants to buy stuff he can touch. He doesn't want to buy like paper stocks and stuff, so he buys things he can touch. And so his joke for that is, in case the whole economy crashes tomorrow, I can't live in my worthless bank account, but I can stay in my worthless house. So I mean, to that extent, I agree with that. The property has intrinsic, it has tangible value. Like, it is a roof over your head. And he had purchased property prior to the downturn in 2009. And the thing is, much the same way with my 401k account, I don't look at my 401k every day. I don't look to see like, oh, is the stock market up? Is the stock market down? Because it's a long-term investment. That's the whole idea behind it. So even I own my own house, and if my house was suddenly to lose 50K in value tomorrow, it wouldn't affect me. Like, it wouldn't make living in it less desirable for me. I'm not selling it, so it's not a loss for me. So I think people fail to realize that when you're buying a house or property, especially if you're going to live in it, as long as you're enjoying living in it, you can continue living in it until a point in time where it's profitable for you to sell it, so you can go live in a different property that you want to live in. Like, yeah.
Well, and it's important to keep, that in perspective, especially when we're dealing with so many people that are like, well, there's going to be a crash and blah, 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 and I'm not going to buy at the height of the market. And, and it's interesting. Right before this started, I just got word that some first-time buyers that we were waiting for the appraisal to come in, and the lender was sweating bullets. She's like, there is no way this appraisal's coming in, because we kind of had to go and do our moonshot price, and it just came in. And it's like, the appraisers are catching on. The appraisers are seeing now, they're understanding the valuation situation, where things are going up 2% a month. Would it be nice for this to kind of slow down? Absolutely. But as long as everybody's seeing that the market's going this way, can it be a time that somebody might regret buying down the road? I don't think so, because look at your monthly payment. It's all about the monthly payment. So, Inez, you got anything to add into that? Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm so good at doing that when people have their mouth full. You're on mute. You don't want to talk? I love your office.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
There we go.
I know you caught me right when I drank my protein shake. Anyway, good morning. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I've got, buyers that I've encouraged not to write that ridiculous over asking, depending on the neighborhood, because there's some neighborhoods that homes are going like over $1 million that we know as agents. They're not $1 million neighborhoods. They're not even $900,000 neighborhoods. And so even though I don't have a crystal ball, it's just my personal opinion that those neighborhoods aren't sustainable long-term. So ultimately it's up to them, it's their decision. But when they ask me what my opinion is, I give it to them, and then it's up to them if they want me to write the offer or not. But I don't know, I'm kind of happy that it seems like we've shifted a little bit. At least I have felt it in my listings. I've set the expectations with my clients that instead of 10 offers, we may just get 2 offers. And instead of getting into escrow in 3 days, it may be 3 weeks. So my listing, I'm opening an escrow today. We were on the market 3.5 weeks. And my client was super discouraged, super cute house. And out of the blue, we got this $60,000 over asking.
Wow.
Like no indication from the buyer's agent that the offer was even coming. So it's still, it's still good. It's kind of like Stephen Thomas said, it's not slow, it's just slower.
Yeah, and it's interesting out there that the agents are, when they're writing an offer, they're assuming that there's a bunch of offers and they are writing at super high prices, and they may be the only offer, but they're not picking up the phone to call and say, hey, how many offers you got? And can you kind of give me a clue at, how things are going? And unless you have, something signed for confidentiality, agents can talk. And I think that a lot of agents are forgetting that. And I don't think that that's helping the clients. Then again, if your buyer says, I want to do this, and you say, okay, well, this is this and that is that, and we all know, then Lori's going to love this. You just are the messenger, right, Lori? And that's something that we have to remember in this business, that's our job. We can advise, we can consult, but technically we are the messenger. And if somebody wants to pay 60 grand over what you're asking for a house without the agent picking up the phone and saying, do you have any offers?
I agree 100%. That's all we do is, we're the messenger. And I use that phrase daily. So I agree with you.
We've been using that a lot, haven't we, Lori? Well, and Raj, what are you seeing like on appraisals? Are you having issues on appraisals on your stuff?
So it depends on the area where it is. I would say it's very location specific. The turn times in, let's say, Orange County or LA County or even San Diego County are not bad. So we'll get them back quickly, which is nice, because if there is an issue, it is nice to have time to resolve it. Riverside does tend to take a little bit longer, same with San Bernardino. In terms of the value themselves, that's tough to say, because I've had properties in this area that I did not expect to appraise. So there was one house just right off of Alicia Parkway that was listed at 900,000, sold eventually at $1,070,000, and I didn't expect it to appraise to that amount, but it did. It actually did appraise to that amount. In contrast, the condos that we were doing in Oceanside last week, which I fully expected to appraise, I really did, underappraised by almost 30,000. And the issue with the Oceanside one was, so the client for that one is actually like one of those really meticulous people. So they actually sent me a list of like, these are likely to be the comps. They sent me like, this is gonna be this one, this is gonna be this one, this is gonna be this one. Like they did that themselves, and they were bang on. Like every single like property used in the appraisal was actually one that the client sent me, and I was very impressed by that. The issue was that the appraiser placed a different value for the things on the property. So for example, one condo, which I thought was a perfect comp, he said was upgraded considerably nicer, 20,000 off. And another one, which I thought was a great comp, he's like, has an amazing view. And I looked and I was like, it's got a view of the parking lot. But apparently I get another $35,000 off, right? So now this presents a huge problem, because he's not picked bad comps. He's picked great comps. The issue is, how do we argue with an appraiser about what the value of an aspect is? Because that's literally their job. Like, how do I tell an appraiser like, oh no, a bedroom's worth way more than 10,000, it's worth 15, or, like, so ultimately in that particular instance, the client agreed with the choice of comps, disagreed with the assessment, said, forget it, it's not a big deal, and brought, I think, like the additional $12,000 as down payment. But I could have easily seen that going the other way. And especially if it had been like a larger purchase, because this was only, I think, like a $400,000 condo. If it had been a larger purchase, it could have presented a problem. So that is to some extent an issue. I think like the appraisers are a little nervous about going for broke. So they'll pick the right comps. They'll just ding them very hard to put themselves in like a conservative space. What I have noticed though is, on the last 3 under appraisals that I've seen, in each instance, the client brought the necessary funds to make up the appraisal shortfall. Didn't even quibble about it. And they were sizable. The first one was 60, the second one was 60, the third one was 40. No issue whatsoever. They all thought the property had the value necessary. So yeah.
Sorry about that. My cat was meowing. I had it on mute. On those ones that didn't appraise, excuse me, was the appraisal contingency removed on all of them so they knew what they were getting themselves into?
So on 2 of them it was, on 1 it wasn't. And in my personal opinion, I think in each instance that the client did get amazing value for their money. Like even there, I mean, honestly, every single time that the appraisal came short, I was actually a little surprised because yeah, I mean, I'm not an appraiser, but I'm always curious. So when my clients goes into contract on something, I'm like, oh, I wonder what this looks like. You know, I sit with my wife and we like pick through the listing photos just out of curiosity. But so I was very surprised in each instance. I think in each instance, the client got great value, no doubt. And I think it actually goes back to that whole thing I was saying earlier. They didn't care about what the appraised value was because they wanted to live in these properties, because all 3 of these were really amazing condos, no doubt about that. Like one was literally like you could throw a rock into the ocean, so close. And that one underappraised by almost like 80,000. I was blown away by that. I think it was listed, I don't even know, at like 450 and came in at like 375. And I was very surprised by that one. But in each instance, they were like, nope, we want to live here. We don't care. Money be damned. So, you know, I mean, which I'm happy, as long as the client is happy to live there. Like who are we to decide what the value of the place is? I mean, clearly it has value to them. So
Yeah, and I think that's the important part, as long as, you know, I think going in eyes wide open, realizing, you know, number one, you better have that money there.
Yeah.
Be able to make up that gap.
Right.
And 2, you understand you may be having to bring that money in. It's, you know, I mean, it's really kind of like a, you know, a crapshoot. You know, who's the appraiser going to be? What are they going to think? How much, you know, what's this going to cost? Is it going to cost you 10? Is it going to cost you 60? Inez, Joyce, you guys have any thoughts on that? Take yourself off mute if you want to join in.
I was actually wondering if anybody's experienced buyers removing contingencies up front, which everybody seems to be doing, and then the appraisal comes in possibly lower. Are those buyers bringing in the difference? I'm just curious. None of my appraisals have tanked, knock on wood. But I do have this one that I'm in escrow now at 60 over. You know, we'll see. But again, that buyer waived the appraisal, which to me doesn't really mean anything because they can still back out. So when I get one of those, you know, beautiful offers that everything is waived, it means 0 to me. It really does. There's no meat on the bone because they can still back out. We know that. It's just a tactic to get your offer accepted. And then in some cases they, you know, are honorable and they stick to their word. But I'm just curious to know if anybody is finding buyers just writing those crazy offers and then not sticking to their word.
I mean, my clients, I can only speak for myself. So I would say that in the last 3 months, I've done about 20 purchases. Of the 20 purchases, 3 came in underappraised. So that's
visibility volume set to 50%.
So 3 out of 20, not terrible. Of each of those, they chose to bring the extra. I think, and I might be inaccurate here, that it's hard enough to get into contract. I think that once a lot of these buyers are getting into contract, if the appraisal difference is small enough, they're okay with it. Though, in each of these instances, the 3 properties that underappraised, the clients were bringing like 20% down. So they had sizable reserves. I can see a situation where obviously if you have like 5% down, that might be a little bit more nerve wracking. I have a client like that right now. The appraiser is actually going out today and I have my fingers crossed, knock on wood. So.
Joyce.
Yes, so Lisa, I have an interesting situation with this one buyer I'm working with. So we've put in like 20 offers. We received one counter and it was not accepted. However, the strategy with this buyer is they are offering over asking because they understand the market. So with their price, if it doesn't appraise, they're willing to put in the difference at their offer price. So they're going into their offers in a little different strategy. But because their offer is either still below the other offers, or because they will not remove the appraisal contingency, sellers are not considering that offer. So it's an interesting strategy, and I understand where they're at because they feel they only want to spend X amount of dollars over. So they're thoughtful in their offer price, which is over, but and so in other words, their offer is final and best. They're not going to increase purchase price because that's where they, will increase.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens if the inventory levels keep coming up a little bit. I mean, the stuff that a lot of the listing agents can ask for right now, pretty soon they're not going to be able to ask for all of that. And things. I think the takeaway of today, right, so far for this session, is pick up the phone and talk to the other agent before you write an offer. And they can tell you whatever they're going to tell you, but I think that that's the, to keep your clients from coming in with a super high price, just trying to secure something because they know that there's a good chance that their offer is not going to even be looked at if it's not ridiculous, which, I feel your pain, Joyce. I don't even know how many offers I wrote for my first time buyers because they were coming in with 5% down and they could not remove the appraisal contingency. But it was just like, can you just show my offer to the seller? Well, we picked the top 4 and we counted them. It's like, wait a minute, you don't know what I can do. Counter me.
So yes, so herein lies my question that I can't get out of my head is that the listing agents, when I ask them to please return page 10 with the reviewed and reject, 99% of them will not do it.
No, I'm right there with you on that one. Yeah.
I have received some. One, I even went to the broker. I said, come on, how am I supposed to let my buyer feel that their offer was even looked at? Well, they're not required to do that. Boom. Thank you very much. Which is true, they're not required. But I make sure to ask because that's the only way I can give some reassurance to my buyer that the seller did look at it because, that's always their question. And I said, well, all I can say is the listing agent said that they did receive your email. I mean, my email with your offer. And that's as far as I can reassure you because I'm not able to obtain the other document. So it's that's such a sticking point for me because that's something that I personally always do. It doesn't matter how many offers, but at least then I feel like I'm letting the buyer know the seller did see your offer. So that's my biggest bugaboo.
Well, if Lori, can you give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down on your noise level there before I ask you a question? Are you good? Or are you bad?
There's a momentary reprieve. Go fast.
Okay, from the compliance standpoint with our grievance here about the presentation of offer being initialed and rejection, What do you think? What advice can you give?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation. Our code of ethics allows us to ask, but there is no requirement to return it. And it's just good common sense, best practices to initial it. If you genuinely looked at it, then initial that rejection. It's simple, but people are just lazy. And I know it's a lot of work to put it in a spreadsheet, so they're going over offers probably just with a spreadsheet. And so they didn't actually look at that offer. They didn't actually print it and touch it. They looked at it from the spreadsheet that the agent put together. So it's disappointing. And unfortunately, there's nothing else we can do. There's nothing in the statute that requires it. And it's a slippery slope to say, well, let's require it by law. Well, then what else are they going to require us by law and impose on our business? And the less we can keep the legislators out of our business, it's better. We just have to police each other and lead by example. So Joyce, if you're doing it every time, hopefully others will also be doing it every time too.
We got some good comments going here. Over here on Facebook, Laurel says, but don't all offers have to be presented? And then Janet, our other queen of compliance, says the code of ethics requires confirmation of presentation of offers if requested in writing. So then I go over here to our Zoom chat. Oh, this is really all over the place today. Kind of fun. Mike White says those agents that refuse to complete page 10 will be remembered when the market changes. Price isn't everything, terms matter. Like buyer will allow seller to remain in properties 45 days after close at no cost, buyer to pay all commissions, buyer to pay off solar, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, and I think that really it is kind of the what comes around goes around thing. I know you got any thoughts on that? I can kind of see you lighting up over there. So.
I was like, buyer to pay all commissions? I'm like, I haven't seen that one yet. I'd be like, hell no.
Actually,
No
I
way.
had one a while back.
Oh my God.
Where somebody, had the cash and they wanted to keep the purchase price down, because wasn't in the market like we are in now, but they just wanted to keep it down for tax reasons. And they said, we'll pay all of the seller's closing costs. And it was like,
The closing costs I get.
oh, commissions included. I mean, all of the closing costs. And yeah, they got the place and they were able to keep the price down, quite a bit. But, I think, you kind of have to be creative within reason.
Yeah.
And I think that, people will be remembered for how they treated people. I know there's certain agents right now that, I'll show their listings because I have to, but I'm like, please buyer, please don't like this property. I don't want to work with them because I know what they're going to do to us. And I shouldn't be like that. People, if you're going to tell people you're presenting offers and you're going to, you're presenting offers on Tuesday morning and you're going to get back to them by Wednesday morning, get back to them by Wednesday morning. Just give them page 10 saying I presented it. Here you go. Sorry, they chose another offer. But, I understand Joyce's buyer's pain. What do you tell your clients when they just write offer after offer and there's no answer, there's no counter, there's no, we presented your offer, but we picked another one. Sorry, here's proof, because then it makes it look like we're not doing our jobs. What do you tell your clients, Joyce, when you have this?
I have a real good relationship with them. And it's just getting better and better with all these offers because I didn't know them going into becoming their agent. And by the way, I do use the buyer broker. So I had that in place as well, because I do that for everybody, but it really helps when it's a buyer that you don't know that you're starting to work with and develop a relationship. So, we understand each other really well, but I always get clarification and they've gotten to, okay, well, and it's like on to the next. We don't even say that, it's just on to the next. They have confidence because I always email them and say, okay, your offer was sent. And then when I get confirmation, if I get confirmation, I always get back to them. Okay, listing agent says I got your offer. So that's the best that I could do as far as those steps. So they know it goes every single time. So it's just a matter of if it was received and or if it was reviewed. And whatever I learn. And I always call these listing agents before I put my offer in too, to find out. And every single one, every one of them is appraisal, no appraisal contingency. Every agent so far of all these offers, that was their first comment to me. I
Wow.
go, okay. And I just, just leave it at that. But these, and it's a really competitive market because I'm in the $500,000, $600,000 range, and that is like everything flies. So, of course. But can I just share a real awkward situation I had yesterday with a showing?
Oh, please
You
do.
were talking about masks. So I went to a showing with my client, and the owner was there and opened the door, no mask. And I had my mask on, and I said, do you prefer mask on, mask off? And he says, oh, yeah, you can take your mask off. And I go, oh, okay. Well, I just want you to know I am vaccinated. So instead of asking if he was vaccinated, I started with, well, I am vaccinated. And he says, okay. And he didn't respond back saying, so am I. So I kept my mask on. But it was really awkward. I'm going, what am I going to say here? So my client had her mask in her hand too. And I just left it up to her to do what she wanted. But, I didn't know how to do this conversation. So that's how I chose to, because the owner didn't have one. So it was kind of awkward, but then, got right through it.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of awkward out there. I mean, it's just weird. it's a weird situation. I mean, everybody's got their different comfort level, and then it's like, yeah, so you don't need to wear a mask. Well, are you cool? Yeah, I'm cool. What the heck does cool mean? I mean, I don't know. It's just wacky. It is wacky. Anybody's got any other comments on that? Guess not. Well, let's go back to our comments then. Let's see. Okay. And Mike said down in San Diego, they're not seeing much of the no appraisal contingency. Maybe they're a little saner in San Diego. Could that possibly be? I don't know. Jeff Campbell's down in San Diego. So, and okay, Mike says they are. Okay. And let's see. Laurel's going back to our talking of contingencies. Let's see. And it says, if a buyer goes back on their agreement to remove the appraisal contingency, then the seller is only kindly inconvenienced because they can simply move on to the next buyer in line. I think we might be seeing a little change on that, don't you guys think? With I mean, is everybody seeing more inventory in their market right now? Show of hands. Joyce, how about you? You guys seeing more? I don't. Yeah, I think we're kind of. God, I could only hope we're going into a time that's a little slower. That would be good, because we did have the talk with Neil Kalin the other day about the all cash offers coming in, and then they switched to financing at the last minute. Has anybody run into that personally? Inez, what happened with yours?
So we had, we closed, I think last Thursday. It was a Nellie Gale Ranch listing that I had. The offer came in all cash, over asking, well over asking on a fixer. And maybe 3 days after we removed all contingencies, I get a call from an appraiser. that says, "Hi, I need to schedule the appraisal. Can you be there in an hour?" And I was like, "Which listing are we talking about?" And he gives me the address, and I said, "No," I said, "You might have the information in wrong because that's a cash offer." And he says, "Well, they switched to a loan, and I'm here to do an appraisal." And I was like, "What?" So I called the buyer's agent, seasoned agent, huh? And I said, "So I get this call. When are we going to tell me?" And he says, "Well, does it really matter?" And I said, "Kind of does. You need to know who the lender is, pre-approval, blah, blah, blah. You can't just switch on it, without letting us know. My client has the right to cancel the escrow if he wants." And he says, "Well, it's not gonna affect the close date, but the appraisal is required." So yeah, it was a switch and bait after we had removed all contingencies. And we closed a day late.
Yeah, and I'm seeing in the comments here on Facebook that a lot of people are saying that that happens to them. And the thing that was surprising is, I don't know if you guys caught the recording. We asked Neil this, and as a CAR attorney, if you picked up the phone and called CAR legal hotline, you could possibly get this as an answer. He said, as long as the seller gets the contracted price for the home and it closes on time, they can do it because there's no damages to the seller. But the one thing that he also said was, now in your case, they had removed the contingencies and the investigation period was over, correct?
Correct.
He said, but the seller doesn't have to let that appraiser in because
correct.
their investigation time was done.
No,
So-
actually, it hadn't, because they had a 10-day inspection, right? He wrote in 10, but under the, forget what section it is, where often buyer's agents also forget to change that number to 10 and it defaults to 17. So technically, we could have let him in. We did. I mean, it was not a big, it was a big deal at first. It was kind of a shock, but in the end, but I did get another offer on the same house, and the agent wrote under other terms that the buyer had the right to change to financing, because it too was an all cash offer, as long as it didn't affect the seller or delay the close of escrow. So at least he gave me the heads up that there's a 50-50 chance, because money was, is so cheap, that the buyer may want to, flip to financing. So I was okay with that, because at least he's given us the heads up. But to completely change without even giving me a courtesy call just to say, "Hey, Naz, our client changed." I mean, this guy was just unbelievable. And when I asked him for, like I said, all the information for the lender, I said, "I need all the lender information for escrow." He's like, "Why do you need all that? Why do you need a pre-approval letter? They're good." It was just like, seriously? Okay. But yeah.
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird because the problem was brought to our attention by someone at the Escrow Association, the local Orange County Escrow Association. And Joyce got that email too. And it's like, this is happening and it's driving us crazy because we don't know what's coming. And, I was like thinking, well, you can't do that. And then Neil's like, well, yeah, you can. And I'm like, yeah, I guess Neil has a point, because it's like, yeah, did they stick with their contract? Not really, but was your seller harmed? All of the peripheral people, I think the escrow officers probably a little irritated because they didn't see this coming. And here's a question for Raj on this one, because I was talking with a group of lenders and about what the escrow officer had said, which was 4 days before close, they were notified that there was loan docs coming in. What can like any lender do that? Or is there certain lenders who would be just without anything going on with the transaction?
Well,
Who would be lending on something like that?
I'm sorry. Could you kind of re-clarify, because I don't think I understand the question.
Okay. The problem that we had heard was
Uh-huh.
from escrow officers receiving loan documents at the last minute. There was
Sure.
no prior communication regarding anything about a loan. This is what they're telling us.
Sure.
And so all of a sudden, loan docs show up 4 days before close. What kind of lender can just generate loan documents and send them out 4 days before close
No,
without anything else being done?
we can, like, actually sometimes I make my closing department send out loan docs without so the process for drawing up the loan docs is, to some extent, if you want them to be accurate, which we do, our closer works with the escrow officer to, come up with the final figures, come up with everything. And then when you get those loan docs, they're precise down to the dollar. Sometimes, and this is fair, and this is why actually escrow officers hate getting loan docs at the last second, they're busy. They have stuff to do. There are transactions where I never speak to the escrow officer because they're in signings all day. So I predominantly work with their escrow assistant. So in those instances, if the docs have to go out, the closing department just says, well, you know what? Close enough is fine. We'll figure it out on the final CD, which can actually be DocuSigned. So as long as a physical CD is signed at the signing, we can change the DocuSign CD later. It just means that the client will end up getting like a slightly bigger reimbursement for whatever the difference is. That being said, again, all the escrow officers I work with, as a courtesy, if I ask them to like schedule a rush signing, they will, but they really hate that. They don't like having to find notaries with like hours to spare. So if I send them docs at noon and I'm like, oh, I really need this signing today, hint, 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 they're like, really, man, you want me to find a notary in like 2.5 hours? So any lender can do it. It's considered bad form though. It's the whole idea is, how would anybody like it if a whole pile of work was dumped in their lap at the last minute? So, it's not the norm for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, definitely, because that's kind of the weird part, to just kind of have it just out of the blue pop up. I guess if there was like an appraisal waiver issued by the lender and stuff like that, maybe nobody would need to be involved. But we did have a comment here from Mike. I'm wondering what the recourse would be if a buyer switched to financing and it did not close beyond losing their EMD, which that could be, I think the seller would have damages at that point, which Neil would say you have damages, and that would be a completely different situation. It was kind of funny because one of the things he said was, you asked for a verification of funds up front, but nobody said that they had to use those funds to actually close. So, in a situation if somebody changed, that would be a fun one to see a case on, because you showed them you had the funds, you didn't use the funds, you couldn't get the loan, you still didn't use the funds. I don't quite know where that would go, but
I actually have a question about that in that regard then, because obviously I'm not a realtor, so I would like a realtor's perspective on whether this is considered bad form or not. So I occasionally have clients who, I'll use the actual example I have right now. They have 20% down. They do. They don't want to use all of it because they want to keep some money, for other things. So their plan is to write a 20% down offer because they do have the funds financed. However, during the transaction, they are thinking they'll just change that to 10% down. They'll pay the PMI and whatnot. Now, the fact of the matter is, since loan officers don't communicate really that type of information to listing agents, really the listing agent, and by extension the seller, would never know what the percentage of down payment on my file is unless I go out of my way to tell them. The cynic tends to keep saying in the transaction, like, well, the sellers just want their money. They couldn't care less how much of it comes from the lender and how much of it comes from the buyer. And I don't disagree with that statement to some extent, but would you guys as listing agents have an issue with a client changing from, let's say, 20% to 10%? Because that seems like a similar situation to the idea of like changing from not finance to finance. I mean, at the end of the day, the terms of the transaction are changed.
Who wants to go first? Inez, Joyce, Inez, you want to go? What's your take on that? It's always fun trying to find the unmute, right?
Sorry. I'm gonna let someone else go because I was reviewing an offer, so I got distracted. I apologize.
No worries. Joyce, you want to hop in on your thoughts on that?
As long as the buyer can close on time, it's that same thing. Yeah, they're switching what they wrote, but if they have the funds, they showed, if they showed proof of funds with their offer and everything is there, I guess it follows along with what Neil said, that no, there's not going to be any harm as long as they close on time. So, it's a different mindset now that I have, to be clear. I won't.
No, and I'm right there with you on that, because it's kind of like it's like, well, wait a second, you misrepresented this and blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like, hey, get over your bad self, stand back. Does it close? Yeah. Does your seller get the money? Yeah. Then what's wrong? I think, again, it's kind of like we talked earlier about being the messenger. And this is kind of one of these times that I think a lot of agents would get very self-righteous with, and I'm sure I probably would have too, until I had kind of the mind shift that you're talking about, Joyce. How dare you do that? How dare you change this when it's like, who's it hurting? And I think this is one of those situations that if anybody gives you a hard time about it, go find that archived webinar from Orange County Realtors and cut that little part of the webinar out and have it handy, because he really did explain it good. And I had a complete mind shift. And we've got a question from Tim. Tim, you gonna pop onto the camera here or unmute? Go ahead.
I am not poppable. But my voice is fine. I think in a situation like that, it was more of a comment. I just didn't want to barge in. You still have an obligation to protect your seller. So I could see where I would ask them to make their earnest money just completely a risk. So it's not refundable. It's you switch your financing on me and it fails, which it could anyhow, but now it becomes in play, and I would create an addendum accordingly. And that's just if my sellers felt, based upon counsel within the lender and what we're thinking, that hey, we can switch this, but they're kind of pulling a bait and switch, and I do want to have some have them have some skin in the game. So if they're that confident about it, then risk your earnest money.
Anybody got thoughts on that? Well, we're a quiet bunch now, aren't we? All righty. Well, over on Facebook, oh, here comes Inez. She's back.
Sorry, I apologize. On one of my last listings, we had a buyer write us an offer. The day we were going to open escrow, they canceled. We went back on the market, received multiple offers. And while I was reviewing the offers, I thought, why does this name sound so familiar? So I went back to the first couple of offers we had. It was the same buyer who canceled, wrote us a new offer with a different agent. Fired that agent, went to a different agent, wrote us an offer. So of course now we're kind of like, do we trust this buyer? So again, put a little meat on the bone, and in the counter, we said a $50,000 non-refundable deposit, because they put a really hefty good faith deposit down. We asked for 50,000 of that to be released within the first 3 days, non-refundable, should the buyer cancel. Because we were already, skeptical of them the first time, but they came back because they blamed the buyer's agent that they didn't like. And but they said that they were committed. They really wanted the house, blah, blah, blah. So we thought, okay, let's see how serious they really are. And I called the legal hotline to make sure I could do it. They said absolutely I could, as long as the buyer agreed. So we wrote that on the counter and they accepted it. And we did close. So sometimes you just got to be a little witch. And I didn't want to play that way, but I also didn't want to fall out of escrow again. And I figured if they didn't agree, they weren't serious.
Yeah.
And they didn't blink an eye. They were like, done, no problem. I was like, okay, great, let's roll.
Yeah.
So
That,
I think in situations like that, I finally have some peace and quiet. In situations like that, we really need to get an attorney involved. I'm glad that you called CAR legal hotline on that, because instantly I thought it's not legal in California. So I jumped on the Q&A, and what I'm reading on CAR's Q&A contradicts what they told you on the hotline. But I think that as long as it complies with the liquidated damages, the civil code's language of the liquidated damages, which whatever you told them must have, then it looks like it is okay. But it specifically says the RPA's language does not permit such clauses under paragraph 21A of the RPA. Any added clause specifying a remedy for a buyer breach, such as a non-refundable deposit or forfeiture of the deposit, will be invalid if the added clause does not independently comply with the civil code's liquidated damages rules. So if they advised you that it was okay, then I guess it's okay. But I think in general, before anyone were to include such language, they better double check with an attorney to make sure it's legal.
Yep, and I totally agree, because when my seller requested that, I said, we can't do that. We can't do that in California. That doesn't exist. And he says, sure it can. Everything's negotiable. And I said, no, I don't think so. So of course, to quote Lisa, ask your broker. Went to Pam, asked my broker. She said, call legal. I called legal. And what they said was, because I'm looking at my notes here in front of me, the attorney said, because I thought it was kind of odd, because I agree with you, Lori, but he basically said that since it was part of I think they put like $80,000 down of their good faith deposit. It was like beyond 3%. And so we took 50% of that, $80,000 or $50,000 of that 80,000. So it wasn't like we were asking for additional funds, but I agree. I didn't think this was possible. So I was a little stunned, and I read him the wording, and he said I was good to go as long as everybody agreed. So we ran with it. Don't know if the attorney was new or not, but I've got his name here somewhere.
yeah, I think as long as you're taking copious notes.
Yeah. And did you say you closed already on that one? Okay, good. So it should all be fine now. No worries.
But Carla mentions over here on Facebook, I was always told that non-refundable is a no-no. Glad CAR told you to go ahead. So, yeah. Well, it's a little after 10. In fact, it's about almost 10 after 10. Does anybody else have anything they want to bring up, chat about? Going once? Going twice? Then I guess we will go ahead and wrap this up. Lori, did you have any closing words you would like to say?
No, just thank you for dealing with my noise, and I'm glad we had others to be on to be able to chat.
Yeah, I like hearing what everybody's up to, I mean, it's always kind of good. It's let's see, are we off next Monday? Oh, that's 4th of July. Yeah, well, it'd be the 5th of July on the 4th of July, but so are we off, Lori?
I think we should be off.
Okay, we're going to be off. We're going to be recovering from a road trip, right, Lori?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I'll need to spin.
Thelma and Louise ride again. It's just like old times. All righty, guys. Well, thank you so much. Thanks, Tiffany, for telling us it was a great call. We appreciate it. So we're going to be dark next week. Raj, happy you're here. Joyce and Inez, happy that you guys popped on. And Tim, thanks for weighing in too. And everybody have a wonderful day. We'll go ahead and stop Facebook first, then stop the Zoom, and we'll see you all later. Bye. Happy 4th of July.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Happy 4th of July.
You too.